Welcome to another Pantheon developer series. This is Mark 4. This is the fourth. I just held the number 4 up to the camera like we're on camera right now. We're not. That's not true. With us, as always, Vu, Ben, Salim. You guys have stuck with us through this project so far. We're glad you did. Tonight, though, we have another special individual joining us here. The person who is doing a lot of the writing, the lead content designer, I believe you said, Tony?
That's it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here. You're the one who is coming up with a lot of the story and a lot of the background information, the writing that's going on for Pantheon, correct?
Yeah, that's my specialty. I've done that with a couple other projects.
Mm-hmm. What other projects have you worked on? Let's get right into it here.
Well, I was one of the people who helped expand the lore in EverQuest, and then I set all the foundation lore in EverQuest 2, and then I created the universe that the Defiance game and TV show are based off.
Oh, you helped work on Defiance. What was that like?
That was really, I mean, I was working at Sony when I had the chance to move over there. I love working with Sony's, but the minute they asked me to go over there, the biggest draw was actually to work with this cross-media project where I'm actually working with developing a TV show. It was way harder than I was expecting. I mean, it's a difficult process because they're producing, the TV production works totally different than game development, so you're never on the same place at the same time. So we're working on like art assets. That's like the last thing they're worried about. So they don't even care to even talk about it. So it was really tough, but it was a great learning experience. I think it was. It's kind of sad not to still be working with that universe now that it's been accepted on a season 2. But I am so excited about the Pantheon universe.
There we go. Good to have you here once again. Hey, also, Vu, as always, we get to see your screen as you make different things. Vu, how are you today?
I'm doing well. Starting to get some more larger overland zones here. I started working with World Machine and trying to get those terrain maps implemented into the zone or into our engine with splat maps and overall normal maps and all the bells and whistles, the HDR, the image-based lighting, trying to incorporate the Tech Endure engine, and slowly, gradually, there's a little some speed bumps here that I gotta. Other than that, things are starting to progress.
What are really quick here, since we are doing introductions? What are you working on? What are people going to be seeing tonight from you?
I'll show a little bit of it right now. It's just like I said, the overland zone, supposedly the waste, but we're still gonna go through design and make sure it kind of fits the description. Just kind of filling in a scene here.
Gotcha. Alrighty.
It's part of the new exterior of the Sunken Sanctum.
Okay.
Kind of a block in and gradually add more detail to get the flavor coming here. I'll show you guys. It's kind of in the distance, but with all the new tech coming in there, things are starting to look nice, come along together. We're getting like good blends on the terrain. We get
Righty. Ben, as always, once again, good to have you here. It's been a busy couple weeks for you getting all the stuff set up, and now it's coming towards the end of the Kickstarter. How have you been holding up here? What's your day-to-day, Ben, for this project?
Well, going into it, we knew that it was going to be, a busy 40 days, and that has remained true. We were expecting it, and it certainly has happened. That being said, the work has been, a lot of fun, just getting to know the community and seeing the game come along as well. Like when I see new stuff that Vu's working on here, or new design docs from Salim, or some new story and lore from Tony, and some of the work that the other guys are working on, like the new website stuff that's going on. It's all just, it's always exciting. There's always something happening. There's always a variety. So I get up every morning and I'm excited to see what the day's going to hold.
There we go. Absolutely. Salim, last but certainly not least, you've had a very overarching view, I assume, of the project as you've seen it come together not just over the last few weeks when we've been doing the Pantheon dev series, but since its inception and since you were brought in on the project. What's that been like for you, especially coming to the close of the Kickstarter here pretty soon?
It's been pretty fun. I mean, I've worked with some of these guys for a long time. Jason and Lenny both were kind of the last holdouts on Vanguard when I was there trying to keep things together. But, you know, I've never got a chance to work directly with Tony or one of our other designers, Noah, or anything like that. I just heard about him. So it was fun, you know, being able to come together and work with some people I knew and some new people, you know, all focus on this one goal to kind of build this world and come up with something different story-wise, and then just, you know, seeing how we can come up with cool gameplay to play off of that stuff, which has been kind of a big focus of the classes, is to utilize this cool lore to produce these kind of kooky visions of some of the classes, some of the more traditional classes. So it's been a blast.
That's our lineup for tonight, folks. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot them in the Twitch chat, twitch.tv/The Rob and Dan Show. We can see the entirety of Vu's screen as he continues to make different everything here. Just beautiful creations that we can see on our screens, both on our little internal desktop here that we're using to produce the show and on the Twitch page itself. I've loved seeing this come together so far. Again, feel free to put any questions you might have in the Twitch chat, and we will get them to our panel here as best as possible. Starting out here with Tony, because I hate to single someone out in this situation. There's so much information flying all over the place, but I have a lot of questions of story.
Sure.
There's so much I'm curious about when it comes to the story. What's going on with the multiple, what is it, fragments of existence, planes? What's going on with the whole interdimensional aspect of the game?
Well, one of our high concepts was we wanted to play in our high fantasy world. So, and we also wanted it to be a bit unique, and we didn't want to create some portal world where it's like the nexus of to all these realities. Instead, I'm not going to get into the really big backstory, but there's a goddess named Nexus of this universe, and she has this lifeless rock that's called Terminus, and her people used to live on there. They're all gone now, so she wants life brought back there. So she reaches across other like dimensions, other existences in reality, and she grabs pieces of life from other planets, and that's where the fragments come from. And she brings these fragments back, and she places them on the world, so it becomes the world is kind of a patchwork of these different worlds, and they retain their because of the arcane nature of Terminus, they retain their biomes, and not only do they come with the civilizations and the beasts that were on that fragment of land they were carried with, but they also carry part of their, if not their entire pantheons from that other universe, and that's why the game's called Pantheons, because there's multiple pantheons from different races that are now living on Terminus. And the races themselves are the players themselves. Their races are also somewhere. They may not. We don't know yet where you're going to start, but you may start next to that fragment that's tied to you, or you may start away from it and work your way to wherever it may be. But that's pretty much what the world you're living on. That was when all these worlds came on there. That was called it's the first wave of the planar collisions, and it stopped. And then for 300 years, these civilizations and pantheons were trying to coexist. And after 300 years, the new wave of collisions start. So that map that some people have seen is actually before the second wave. So that map might have already changed also. So, and that's one of the things we wanted to do with the world, is we can introduce new worlds that are actually in the in the game world, part of the landmass, and not some place that I teleport to.
Gotcha. All righty. Questions are starting to come in on the chat. We're glad to see that. We're going to get to those here very shortly. One last question, though, about the different fragments and realms and what's going on with that. Specifically about wizards, too. Why the insanity aspect? And how deep does that insanity aspect go when wizards start to push too hard and too greedily into magic?
Well, wizards... well, before I get into that, I guess let me tell you that the whole world, just like our world is everything's comprised of dimensions, whether it's stuff like, the standard dimensions and then adding time into it. All these dimensions go to make our universe. The Pantheon universe, at its core, is created by these, it's the planes of arcana, so it's magical dimensions, and all these come together and work together to make everything exist. Well, a lot of the classes interact with those, or access that plane of magic in different ways. It's really difficult to do. One of the most dangerous ways is to attach to work with chaos magic, and chaos magic is kind of like free radicals, like I like to say. They're just bouncing everywhere, all over. They're touching every single magic plane. So the wizard, being foolish and brave or whatever, he uses chaos magic a lot to interact with all these planes of magic, because that's kind of the palette for him to create spells. And since that's his primary way of interacting with the like 6 to 8 planes of magic, the longer you dabble in chaos magic, the more your brain gets a bit rattled and you're a bit off kilter. And they're pretty much the damage dealers. So just by their pure might alone of their spells, they're deeply connected with this chaos magic just to access all the to create those spells that are so powerful. That's what pretty much leaves them as that kind of a mad scientist in a way, but even a mad scientist with 2 daggers. But yeah, that's what drives them crazy.
And from how Salim and Ben and Vu have just briefly gone over it in a previous episode, it sounded to me very similar, or distantly similar at least, to how chaos and magic works with Warhammer. Is it similar at all? Was there any inspiration there for you?
There was no inspiration from me for that. I don't really, most of the time I try not to create anything that's similar from other universes. I love Warhammer, but I'm not that knowledgeable about it. I don't know that much about it to even actually take it from them. So
okay, nope, that's fine.
It's interesting that you say that, and I'll go look at that and see if there are similarities. But it's definitely just something that we thought about, how we wanted our world to actually run, and what I tried to create something that our designers can actually work with to create, when we get down to it, creating spells and even creating pantheons.
Sure. Let's start taking some... yes?
Really quick, going along with that same thing, but juxtaposing instead of Warhammer, Ben has brought up a couple of times the Rifts pen and paper RPG to kind of give at least a little explanation of how the planes work to some extent. Is that a RPG that you've played in the past or looked at in the past?
I am familiar with it. It's the one where where the world is like a nexus, and there's planes are interacting with their single world. Correct?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's the extent I know of it.
Yeah. Sorry, Tony. Before this, I reference Rift a lot just because I love Rift. So it's been me that's been using that as kind of a way for people to understand. A way that our world might be set up.
Yeah,
it's just the best example right now for me to describe the world.
Yeah, one of a huge difference is our world has it doesn't have some permanent or even any kind of temporary connection with their origin worlds. So everything is kind of, in a sense, trapped here, including the gods that are here.
Everything from different worlds just got smashed into this one central location.
Right.
All right, questions now from the chat. For Rail, first one to toss in a question at us. Is the Sunken Sanctum, meant to be a raid zone? Are you guys even able to discuss what is and isn't going to be what kind of zone yet?
That probably would not be a raid zone.
Mhm.
It's probably be like a cool little group zone. Not sure what level range it would be in or whatever, but I hadn't envisioned that as being a raid zone.
All righty. Next question is from Ilvat. They're asking how subclasses are going to work. Are you locked to one subclass permanently, or can you switch as if it were a talent spec?
The details on switching we haven't worked out yet, so got to flesh that out. It's kind of low level, but in general, the way that it works is it just kind of goes back to the core combat. As a player, you are as a fallen hero, you are basically finding kind of cultivating abilities from the world and templates. Templates are, I've described them before as kind of like your playing hand. When you go into combat, you can only have so many cards in your hand that you play, and you can't access anything else unless you pop out of combat and change things up. So the core of your template kind of determines what path you're on. So if you're a Planestalker rogue, that means that you've got a Planestalker rogue template loaded, and the abilities that are linked to that class and any general abilities that are linked to or available all can be slotted in there, so you can kind of change up how you play your Planestalker. But if you want to be switch to assassin mode, you can load up a template there. The templates may not be as developed because you spend a lot of time as a Planestalker, so all your Planestalker templates are going to be leveled up. They're going to have their passives, whatever. But you want to invest in assassin a little bit, so then you can level that up and unlock more slots, so you can add more abilities to it and stuff. So yeah, you'll be able to swap out. It's just working out how that's going to work. Whether it's going to take a lot of time, whether there's going to be a refresh time, when things like that. You're not going to be able to do it in combat. It's just us figuring out how frequently we want people actually doing that in between combats and stuff to see how it works.
Okay, alrighty. Next question here, as we're rapid firing these just a little bit. I think this one is going to be mostly directed to you, Tony. How will deity worship function? The person asking this is referring specifically to racial limitations, but if you feel like going into detail, go ahead.
Well, obviously, there's stuff we're working on and finalizing, especially since some of our designs, we actually like to hear the feedback. But the way that I set it up was that if I was human and I come into the world, I can, as I'm creating my character, I can choose any of the gods in my human pantheon. And as I adventure and I learn of more other gods, then there should be a way that I can start praising those gods, and therefore that I'd have to drop my god and just convert to this other religion, but some of those would be harder than others because there's some other race. If I wanted to go to the ogres, they're not going to like me. I'm human, so it's not going to be an easy thing to do. Like for me to praise an ogre god or something like that, that's going to take a lot of work, and that's something we want in the world. We don't want everything easy. Like I just want to pick any of these gods. No, if you take the time and want to worship one of the ogre gods, then people will take note of that. And it's just another trophy for you to show off, like, oh, look at my god. Like, why would they even expect you? Of course, that will probably change your faction with the humans, but that's something you've chosen to do. But you do want you to, when you start out as a race, I want you to be able to choose from a god in your race.
Okay. Follow up to that question, because it's itching at the back of my brain. how active will the gods be in not just day-to-day life, but the overarching activities of your worlds?
Well, gods in this world they exist. Most of the deities exist. Their pantheons exist in pocket dimension.
Mhm.
So it's like a plane, but it's connected to their starting city, the city that is their capital. And other than that, there are god kings on the ground, and god kings are gods that don't have enough followers or that were exiled from their pantheon. So you can encounter those more often, god kings. But a god in itself is like, they interact, since they're so bound to the city, like the humans have a pantheon, there are things that they're going to be doing.
Mhm.
They have their own little personal motivations, and I'm hoping that through I want to map out through the whole, like, say, a year. I want to know what they're doing, so we can make small changes in the world as these gods are reaching out. Because in our world, gods, the more followers you have, the more power you have. So some of these gods definitely are going to want more power, and we want their influence to be seen in the world over time. So we're still playing with how we're going to do that, but it's something we want to see, kind of like the effects of a god's influence stretching beyond their borders, and we want that to seem a bit dynamic in the world.
Okay, alrighty. It sounds like the gods are going to have these very distinct personalities to them. You're playing to make sure they have these certain agendas, these certain ideals that they really tend to focus on that drive them forward.
Oh yeah, very much so.
Mhm.
And I just got to be careful about how many gods we put out there, because we are a small team, so I don't want to create too much work for the art department. But we definitely want, like, the gods, and especially their pantheons, to have like one motivation. And some pantheons have only one god, some pantheons have 4, some pantheons have 12. It's just that's why I do want that kind of dynamic element in the world, because I don't want their motivations to be so ambiguous that the player doesn't know what they're doing or who they're siding with, right?
Next question here from the chat. This sounds like it's going to go mostly towards Salim from Sogo TP. Will trade skills be interactive like in Vanguard, or will it be more like EverQuest 1 where you just set the combine to be made and make them all go, then go AFK?
We haven't really talked about how deep the interaction the player will go as far as creation of items. But I mean, the notion of the quick combine, like was in EverQuest, I mean, that will exist regardless of what we do, simply because that functionality is useful in general for stuff. But if we have the resources to, I'd love to put in a system like Vanguard, or at least revisit it, because there was one thing I wanted to do different with the Vanguard system that would have made it a lot more interesting as far as the minigame goes. But that we have to determine at the time where the game is, if it'll fit well. But yeah, I don't have a problem with doing that. I think it added a lot to Vanguard. It's just got to make sure it fits into the game.
Okay. Alrighty. Keep the questions coming in chat, guys. We got plenty of them, but we can always use more. Also, please consider donating to their Kickstarter if you haven't done so yet. Their Kickstarter is directly linked in the video. It is the image in the bottom right-hand corner. There is also a link to the Kickstarter itself below the video. Insider information. Let me just double check to be sure that it is there. Yes, it is. Pantheon, rise to the following. Click here to support the project on Kickstarter. Do so. Also, guys, if you haven't done it so yet, change your Kickstarter passwords. There was a little bit of a security issue earlier in the week. It has been sorted, but make sure to change your password if you have not done so already.
And we did have a question from R. Flynn asking about we saw some of the grass and the brush moving around a little bit from like wind in the landscape we see right now. Will that be affecting like trees as well going into the future? How alive do you want the world itself to look, other than just like the players walking around in it?
Whatever we can get away with without messing up performance, right? I mean, yeah, we want swaying trees. If anyone's seen the weather demo that was released for the dynamic weather system in Unity, you can see trees are swaying there. It's all possible, and you know, we as much of that as we can get in, that without messing up the game experience from performance point is what you can expect. But yeah, we want it to be as live as we can get it within reason.
Okay.
Sorry for missing that question there in chat. I'm trying to follow them as best I can. If you could put like a capital Q at the beginning of your question, just so I know, hey, a question right here, it would help out a lot. Appreciate that, guys. Soga TV has the next question down the line. If a player decides to bond/use a specific planar energy all the time, will they receive certain bonuses or hindrances based on their choice?
I actually answered this in the chat, but
oh, I'm sorry.
We don't really have a notion of bonding to a player energy. So I couldn't answer the question, but in my response, I said that it's an interesting concept. So I mean, I'll have to bring it up because I can definitely think of some cool stuff that can come out of that. Even people have also been asking about number of worshipers. I could definitely see some cool stuff relating to like the different pantheons warring and the number of followers somehow affecting something on the server, things like that. So definitely a lot of. I go back to it. Pantheon, the lore has a lot of potential. So cool ideas like that. All you can consider all that stuff kind of on the table unless we've already gone through it and decided not to do it.
Okay. Debase ROTF had this question to ask: what percentage of abilities will we be using when in combat? Are we going to use like 5 abilities? Also, will there be abilities restricted to certain slots, so you need to choose specifically to have one ability or another instead of having both?
Outside collecting abilities, you do want to collect templates, like I said earlier, because templates have a different setup. There is basically templates have like kind of a charge up ability. And that ability has an affinity with certain colors and stuff, or planar magic that helps it grow or like power up so you can use it. So if I get a template, if I get this hero's template, Tony or Valen's template, he may have super mega boost as his power up ability. And he's got 4 or 5 slots that I can slot stuff into. Each slot has a color affinity associated with it. But that's more of a suggestion, right? So if this template is more of a black-green template, you should probably slot black-green abilities in there so that you can, kind of work the whole synergy that is your abilities to the big ability. And then obviously that plays into the group side of things when it comes to doing like skill change and stuff like that. But we're not going to force you or stop you from slotting in different color stuff. The only problem is that there's a consequence for that. If you slot a red into a black, then the cost of slotting in that ability is doubled or tripled or whatever it may be, because each slot has like a power level on it. So this slot can take up to a 3-star power, and the template will only let you take up so many points. So if you slot this in there, it might cost double, which means you may have to leave other slots empty or use really low level versions of spells. But if people want to experiment and they can come up with a cool way to use a template, then we don't want to stop them from doing that.
For Rail, I had a question. This is one that's probably going to go back to Tony, but Salim, you might have more information as well. Do the Pantheon gods actively compete against each other for new believers? And I'll throw caveat in, not just for new believers, but for territory or for property or for power or any kind of real conflict between the gods there?
There are certain conflicts between gods, but not all gods are looking for a conflict. So, and that could change with players over time with the players' interaction with the world. But there will be some, but not all of them are in conflict.
All right.
It goes like that question goes to what I was just saying about I could see a cool like kind of global like thing where you know the balance of power is kind of shifted because number of followers on one side or another. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
also,
potentially, like one god could see, possibly see like another plane get smashed into Terminus, and then go like, I'm really interested in what this new plane's got to offer. I think I might want to get involved in that.
Yeah,
I could see a lot of gods just start, or at the Pantheon, starting to see stuff from different planes and finding more interest in that than their own.
Oh yeah, definitely, and in that new chunk, bringing some other deity into the mix is also going to be something to look for, because who knows how he's going to interact.
There we go. In addition, I don't know if we answer this question or not, but I think we saw it. Is the changing of allegiances when it comes to your gods going to be quest-based, or is it going to be a little more complex than that?
I would think we want it. I think we want that complex, but we don't know exactly yet what we're going to use to do that. So that's hard to answer, but most definitely it's probably going to include a quest along the scale of it's probably, I guess if it was going to be a quest, it'd be along the scale of an epic quest.
Speaking of epic quests, Yogg also asks, oh no, you answered that, Salim. I'm sorry about that. He was asking about gods giving epic quests, and you simply said there will be epic quests. Where they come from, you're not sure yet. Moving on.
There will.
Then, yes?
Yeah, I was just going to say there are going to be epic quests, but our game is primarily we want the quest to actually be, you know, special. So we're not going to litter the world with just a bunch of really minor trivial quests. We have other ancillary systems that will be used to do the go get 10 rat tails. That won't be like actually called a quest.
Okay. Alrighty. Moving down the line, we got tons of great questions. Thank you, everyone, for asking your questions here. We have about a half hour left in the evening, so please continue sending in questions. Who is next? M. Howard 48 had this one. Will we be seeing some concept race artwork soon? And how soon off would that be then?
I can't really answer that right now. James is currently working on a concept for another area. I don't think we've laid out when we're going to get concept art in for the races yet, but I mean it should be relatively soon.
Okay. Koklachev asks, loading times on zones. Are you guys going to be putting in any serious load times, or are you going to try and smooth it out?
Well, I don't think anyone puts in
it's a feature.
Long load times. We will try to have our load times be as low as humanly possible, but we will have zones.
Alrighty. It's not a bug, it's a feature. Ferdek would absolutely love to know about halfling gods and pantheons. He really wants to know about halfling gods and pantheons.
That was an interesting one because their background is the halflings come from a planet that they never even have seen their god, so they just know her as the mother of all, and it wasn't until that fragment of their world ended up on Terminus that they even met their god, and their god, being separated and marooned just like they were, wanted what was left of their world for herself, so she actually exiled them, and they ended up on Celestius, on the continent of Celestius, and eventually ended up befriending the Elven Pantheon. So that one of the halflings ascended to become part of the elven pantheon. So the elven pantheon is shared between elves and halflings. But that right there could change because I set that one up where something else is going to transpire over time.
So the actual halfling goddess pantheon isn't
It's
Roland
part of
Ocean?
the halflings, and the halflings and the elf pantheon are the same. That's what what we'll be able to choose from.
Okay.
But during the life of the game, it's expected that will change for the halflings.
Okay. That sounds like okay, I'm curious. How was this goddess just completely separated from all of her people, and how'd the faith continue? I gotta know.
Well, it's much like our own world. They were praising something that they had a lot of faith in, but they'd never seen.
Mm-hmm.
And it just once they arrived here, they met her and found her to be much more selfish and herself. She's much more closer to being kind of like a mortal god. So she panics and she wants to. Her whole thing is she wanted her own paradise and her own plane. And now that that's gone, all she has next to that, closest to that paradise, is this fragment from the world that they brought with them.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of sounds like a little bit of an introverted god, almost.
Yes, it is. That's like, we don't want our gods to all appear the same. We want them to have, we want them to have changed, and we want the pantheons to react differently upon their arrival on Terminus. And hers was, I'm going to keep this fragment to myself. You and all you people go away. She's actually at a god king status because she's mortal now, very powerful though. Because as gods lose followers, they become a god king. But she still has enough power, and she's off in their fragment, which is some island somewhere else that you probably will see. And the halflings are adjacent. Their Blackwoods are adjacent to the elven forest.
Okay.
And they shared the elves and the halflings shared a lot of, they both love nature and so they wanted to preserve the same things. So that's where the elves came in and said, we'll help you guys. And that's where the elven pantheon even looked down and said, we'll ascend one of you into our circle.
There we go. Sketch had a question about gear customization. How is it going to work? He asks about, can he make his sword look like an axe, or is it going to be stuck as a sword? Is it going to be based off best stats, or how exactly is gear customization going to work visually?
Barring the implementation of like a weapon like the switch axe from Monster Hunter, your sword will be a sword. But if he's asking if we're going to have weapon appearance slots and armor appearance slots, that is up for debate, because while same with armor dying, while I as a player I dig appearance slots because I can make my character look however I want, and it also makes kind of like older armor. Like if I liked my old raid armor, I can wear that. I like that look. I want to wear that armor. But when you think about popping into a city, you're kind of a low-level player. You pop into a city and you see this guy with this crazy cool armor on. Even if he's a patchwork, he's got some pieces that look crazy, and you inspect him and you see that he's got all this high-level stuff on. It makes you want to, you want to get to that point in your career.
Sure.
So we're trying to balance. Actually, it really is just kind of reviewing that and trying to find out which is a better route for us to go. Like I said, I played vanilla World of Warcraft, and when they released, I think the third tier raid gear, I was angry because I wanted to keep looking like I wanted my rogue to stay in its look from Molten Core.
You didn't want to look like a Power Ranger.
Yeah, exactly. And it drove me nuts that they didn't have appearance slots. But I can respect the fact that they said, hey, no, we want you to wear what you got, so people know what you where you got stuff. Of course, they've introduced appearance slots now, but
Yep.
But yeah, it's certainly up for a debate. The details will be released once we figure out what we want to do.
I feel your pain. The day I had to take off my Drake Talon pauldrons as a warrior was one of the saddest days of my life. So sad. And then to have those purple things on my shoulders for months on end, like, no, this is wrong.
Yeah. When you have to put in like not saying that this is wild, but when you have to start putting in features to hide certain slots of armor, I want to turn off shoulder pads and helmets and all this. Well, maybe you should just let people. Maybe you should just put appearance slots in and let people take what they want to.
See, I'm kind of the opposite way myself. I like wearing just plain appearance stuff, like so not slot my appearance slots at all. So what I'm wearing is what I have. So what you see is what you get, type thing. That's just my personal preferences. It's the way I play games. I never use the appearance slots.
Yes.
I like to be that way, but
sometimes it's kind of it's
when I have bright purple all over my shoulders and my helmet, I'm like, no, I can't do this.
I'm gonna hide under a rock.
Yeah, I'm just gonna never leave Orgrimmar again. We've gotten so far off track. This is about Pantheon, not World of Warcraft. Memories. Zoe asks, most MMOs are plagued with becoming top-heavy after a few years, which could be a huge issue for group-focused games. You guys have said Pantheon is going to very much be a group-focused game. Is there a way that you guys are planning to combat that? How are you guys planning to deal with that possible issue?
Top-heavy as in there's no low-level players, I assume? There's no one to group with that low levels?
Honestly, I've never played a continuous group-based MMO. I'm not sure what Zoe means.
That's my interpretation of it.
Okay.
That's what I think means. Well, we don't really have details for what we're thinking about progression. That type of stuff's kind of the forefront of our mind. We're trying to make sure that people can group with others and not have to do things like put in mentoring or anything like that. Not saying that we wouldn't, but trying to think of another way to do it. And we think that we can come up with something. We just want people to play. We want people to be able to pop in and just play with other people and not have to deal with that gap. But we also want to avoid, kind of the downside of mentoring where I'm a level 60 warrior. I mentor down to a level 10 and, things are scaled down. I still destroy everything. I hate that because the person that's the grouping with you, they're not getting the experience, right? They're just being rushed to cap, which just contributes to top heavy stuff. It's a big thing when we start talking about progression. That's one thing that we want to make sure we consider. Also another thing about progression in general, our lead programmer, his big thing is just achievers in general. Regardless of how long it takes, people will rush to the end game, and then that helps foster this huge rift between players. So we want to try to resolve that issue. I'm not saying that we are the messiahs of game creation, but we're trying to think outside the box when it relates to that type of stuff.
Again, folks, thank you for tossing in all your questions there. We are a little far back in the chat. So if we haven't gotten to your question yet, don't worry. We're going to try to get to as many as possible. We're just going down the line to hit them one after one after one after one. You guys have spoke previously about mounts. Nitsua is asking about when land mounts will be available. Do you have any kind of progression plans for mounts?
When you get a mount, we haven't figured it out yet. We're still trying to get a grasp on how large the world's going to be. But I can say that it's not going to be super simple to get a mount. We're giving an amount away as part of the Kickstarter. But when you'd be able to ride that mount is still to be determined. We're not going to have people creating a character and summoning a mount in the newbie areas or whatever. So the details on that, I mean, you know, as far as travel goes, there will be a mount progression. How fast mounts go, don't know. Will there be a notion of trotting and running at full speed and a meter and things like that as it relates to your horse or whatever? I would love to see that. Will you need to feed and care for your mount? I'd love to see that too. But
get a little more personal with how you manage your mounts.
Yeah. I mean, if you love your mount, yes. The only problem is that kind of takes away the notion of having a bunch of mounts, right? Because it's hard for me to put in something where you fall in love with, you know, one or two pets or whatever, when we're just giving away a stable full of things and you just kind of forget about the last one. So it's just, once again, it's just another one of those things that we have to sit down and talk about, but it's not super high priority right now because there's other parts of the game that have to be worked out first.
Alrighty, moving on down the line here. Tony, a question for you, I do believe. Besides race, what are God and God Kings going to be dedicated towards?
You mean as far as, is there a god that like anybody can worship him or what?
Well, you said before that the goddess of the halflings was misworshipped,
Right.
and that was just kind of her thing. She was the god of the halflings. Is there going to be a god for warriors, or is there going to be a god for avarice, or are there going to be more complex but direct ideas for what gods are about?
Gods are definitely based towards race, but the thing is, there are some gods that are special case that have moved beyond that and are like Orenthal. People have seen his concept. The minute he got struck down to become a god king, he's now working for himself. So he definitely wants a lot of followers. If he gets enough followers, he's gonna ascend now. And right now he's like the god of Skyfen, which has a lot of works with a lot of flame and magma, lava, all that stuff. So if he can achieve god deity status again, then he's like a new god people can worship. Although there are things now that are being set up where if you went into the world, you can start praising him, and maybe he will. Because if he did, he would be a god that isn't really like all the other gods. Most of them are definitely bound to a race. He's just, here's this way of thinking, or this, whoever wants to follow me, go ahead. And there are a few cases like that in the world where gods have went off on their own and trying to start their own belief, their own pantheon. So they're not all entirely race, but for the most part, when you enter the world, that's what you're gonna see. But as you progress through the world, you'll see variations of what a god can be.
I'm going to skip ahead in questions because we just had a really good question from Beckalter at the very bottom of the chat there. Very pertinent too for gameplay. Could a player ever ascend to become a god king or a god?
Oh my gosh. Oh my lord.
That's a very tough question to ask, but I felt it was.
If his name's Valen, I think it could. Yes.
Well, I mean, technically, I would say probably not, but if you look at the story, you are a fallen hero. So I mean, you are already kind of supernatural as a player, and your whole thing is trying to find your old artifacts or armor or gear or whatever that existed with you before you fell, because you're trying to get back to that point. You're trying to get back to wherever it was you fell from or whatever battle you were involved in. So you're kind of, you know, at least relative to us, you are kind of a supernatural, more powerful being. You're collecting all these different abilities from all these fallen heroes and things like that. So you're kind of, you are definitely God-like, I would say, once again, relative to us. But would you ever ascend and become a god and have people worshiping you? I'd say no, but man, my brain is,
It's tempting.
I could think of some cool stuff if people could get followers and stuff like that and get power from that. That would be pretty crazy. But then again, you'd have the one guy who's popular on the server. And
yeah, I can see us having like some special, because I've thought about that, and I think we could even probably run, people want events in the world, and I could see us running something where somebody who or a group of people could end up being like, hey, you guys are going to be a god for like 3 months or whatever, you know. I can see something like that.
Tie it into a Twitter account. Tie it into a Twitter account. You got followers right there.
Oh no! Wow, that's terrible. Were you done there, Tony? Did you have more to say?
No, that's pretty much it. I just think I've been thinking that I think we could have events where you could temporarily be one and do something special, because our world is named Pantheon, and it's definitely something that makes you wonder, how can we create how can a player become a Pantheon? I mean, enter a Pantheon. So I think it's a possibility, but they're not going to be like, I don't think they could be a persistent divine being.
Sure. R. Flynn had this question real quick about the Pantheons. If a Pantheon gets annoyed at someone, if one of the Pantheons or a specific god just gets absolutely annoyed and ticked off at mortals, could they say, I'm going to pick up this really angry big creature and chuck it at you guys? Would we have events like that going on?
So you mean like, you know, it raining toads and people getting warts and stuff,
or even like a really nasty mini boss or something, like a giant Hydra just getting chucked on
sending the Kraken.
Yeah.
Actually, Ben and I had a discussion a while ago about travel, and and I told him that I would, you know, I would love for people to be compelled to travel simply because of the crazy stuff that can happen on the way. So, you know, we were talking about, you know, what if all of a sudden, you know, this cloud system pops in and there's lightning striking the ground, and all of a sudden, you know, this creature spawns, and like, it's just completely, it just works with the energy of the world and stuff like that. You know, lightning's arcing and stimulating, you know, whatever planar energies in the area, and it forms this, you know, planar golem, and that's just a part of traveling. It's happening whether you're there or not, you know, which is effectively kind of a public quest system. So yeah, I mean, if that was somehow linked to, you know, worshippers pissing off a god, and he's like, all right, well, I'm about to drop some godly curses on this area or this city or your party. Like, yeah, I mean, that could be cool. I mean, if you're fighting a bunch of mobs and they call forth their pantheon, and that pantheon strikes you down with some sort of crazy event, like, yeah, I mean, I could totally see, with our lore, I could totally see some cool stuff like that happening.
That could be incredibly exciting. That could be really exciting.
For sure.
Really quick.
Kind of going along with that, I always had the thought for games like this where you were mentioning the epic quests wouldn't necessarily be littered all over the place. They'd have to be very specific and very rare. Would you guys be averse to the idea of actually being able to like use the pantheons and the god kings as almost avatars for yourselves, so then you could go into that character and then just like give someone this impromptu quest? like just look through the follower list and then pick somebody and say, hey, you've got this quest that we're only giving you because we like you, or because you were randomly picked. I could see that being something really interesting for the community and for the developers as well.
Yeah, that could be cool for sure. And the only downside to that is that if that quest results in any item of power, yeah, it's like that person won the lottery, and it's not like I can go out and just hunt down a mob that drops that item.
Mhm.
That guy got an item that no one will ever get again. So we'd have to be careful with someone. I mean, it sounds pretty awesome to me. I'd love to pop in one day and be like, "Hey, dude, here you go.
Yeah,
You
just
this
pop
awesome
in.
quest. Now go do it."
Yeah, pop in and pick
but
like
resulting
the
item have
fellowship.
to be- What's that?
You go in and like pick like the fellowship almost. It's like, hey, you 5 guys, we're giving like all of you these different quests, but they don't know that the others also have the quest.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you just have to be careful with doing that stuff if the item acquired has any degree of significant power.
Yeah.
But because then it's like, well, I worked during the time that you guys were on, or I wasn't there, and all the real life stuff kind of pops in there, and we look like jerks.
It reminds me of
cool.
when that GM item was sent to a player in World of Warcraft.
Whoops.
Which one was that?
Oh,
spear or whatever?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I mean, this was a few years back. Yeah, I remember EverQuest too. It was that bottle of ooze or something where it was like an insta-clicky 220 DD. So you could
yeah.
Oh my
crazy.
goodness.
Yeah.
There was a time when the slime-coated harpoon, I think it was, had a Trax poison proc on it. And I think someone was using it, and it was like poisoning everybody in the zone or something. It's a long time ago.
Wow. Wow.
It was pretty crazy.
Trying to go through a couple more mentions here real quick. Sethbrick is saying, Vu, this is important for you. The genius that designed Sibyllus, apparently it is a dungeon from EverQuest. He's curious if they're working on Pantheon. That would be you, Vu, isn't it?
See.
There we go. Ask and you shall receive.
Genius speaks multiple languages too.
You are the best dungeon designer ever. Congratulations, Vu.
Thank you.
Ferdek, want to ask really quick, what stats are you planning to use? Intelligence, wisdom, strength, etc.
Wow, you know what's funny is I was just thinking earlier that there are people who are like, you guys don't give enough information, we haven't given enough information. And whenever we do an interview, no one has ever asked about like stats or anything. They only ask about the stuff that we've actually given information on. As far as stats and skills go, there will be a notion of, attributes, what they're called, I don't know, but, we were, what was it we were talking about? I think we were talking about like the notion of like a ogre wizard or something like that, and why I didn't want to say, well, there's intelligence, right? Because when you think ogre, you don't think a very smart person, but an ogre magically could be very in tune with planar energy. So, if the notion is, if the requirement for that is having high intelligence, then it doesn't work for the ogre. So we could never even consider me having the ogre as a wizard or whatever. So, when it comes to what we name them, we'll probably be more focused on not the attribute of not like physical attributes of strength or anything like that. Although strength might still make it in there. But when it comes to the more arcane stuff, it'd probably be, devotion or piety or whatever, versus wisdom. But yeah, right now we definitely want to have like a, kind of a core attribute system, and we want every attribute to help in some way. So, an example of EverQuest, I think it was intelligence would increase proc rate and stuff like that. So, even as a melee character, you didn't have high intelligence, but when you could get that bump, it was nice. So we're definitely thinking along those lines. As far as skills go, not that that was asked, but just to get more into it, we're thinking about a pretty involved skill system. You need to raise your skills. Skills go through use. And if people can, if we all agree, I'd like to also explore the notion of skill erosion. If you don't do something for a while, it may actually start to deplete somewhat. But that's obviously further discussion. So yeah, that's kind of a quick primer on that stuff.
Well, that works just fine. That's plenty of information thrown out all of a sudden. Odd that you were just thinking about that. That's crazy. We're getting a lot of good information out of here.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be our last question for the night. Try and pick a good one here. Buddy Faringrove is asking about zones and dungeons requiring keys to enter. I'm going to expand the question here slightly to say, how is zone locking going to happen? Whether it's, okay, you complete this tier of instance so you can access this tier, or this one specifically leads to this one, or you can't go to these zones until you finish these quests. How is that going to function for Pantheon?
I really think that's almost a content by content answer. Will we have people having a back flag like in Pop? Would like to avoid that as much as humanly possible.
Sure.
But will there be a notion of getting a Sebulus key? Probably. Or will there be level requirements on zones? Maybe. I'm not sure that mechanic is super necessary, simply because if you're not high enough level and you go in there and you conquer it, well, you conquer it within reason. If you go into a level 50 zone, you conquer as level 1, we're probably going to be looking at you because there's something wrong, or looking at our content. But yeah, I would think for the most part, it'd probably be we'd have keys that make sense. If you're trying to access some long closed vault, you probably shouldn't be able to just walk up to it and open it when no one else has been able to open it. But as far as backflagging and stuff like that, like I said, if we end up doing something that requires that or has a series of flags, it would be purely just kind of a content call. Hey, we wrote this content. It just kind of works this way. We want to limit people in this way. But I think we can get away with a lot of stuff if it's, mainly a gear. Sorry, my son is apparently going crazy in the background. If it's a kind of a gear lock versus having to force you out of it through flags. If you just don't have the gear, then you shouldn't be able to do it anyway. That's what I'd rather see.
You're not too worried about creating these artificial blocks if they're not actually in game. If there isn't a massive locked door stopping you, why stop them from trying to go forward? They're just going to get get killed in the first place.
And that's
natural selection.
That goes into the death mechanic we just released, stuff like that, and just our philosophy in general. We want you to respect the environment. We want you to explore, but when you're exploring, we want you looking over your shoulder. And you cannot be afraid of your environment, at least not as much as I think you should be, if you don't fear death. So yeah, if you want to go into that crypt, by all means, go into that crypt. When you meet the Lich Solias and I kill you, well, you shouldn't have came in here. So yeah, if I start harvesting your corpse for organs and stuff, then thanks.
I'll just warn everybody ahead of time too that Salim does camp corpses. So
that's the risk that we all enter into.
Ben's been trying to get his corpse back for days.
I'm just waiting for him to fall asleep.
He does not sleep. Wow. Oh, PvP servers, how I've missed you. Oh, happy days are here again. Thank you so much, guys. This has been fantastic. This has been the 4th episode of the Pantheon Developer Series. Kickstarter ends this Saturday. It's coming up here.
And just a reminder, we will be doing a live stream from midnight Eastern on Saturday until I think it was 2:30 Eastern when the Pantheon Kickstarter actually ends. So we'll be doing basically the stream all day during that time. And taking requests from the developers if they wish to see us play any specific games. We will take requests from there. We'll take requests in the chat, and you guys can sit around with us and watch or lurk as we wait until the very end of the campaign. And by the way, I just upped my pledge amount because I want the mount.
You can
Wow.
you can have that dragon I'm working on.
There you
Awesome!
go.
Wow. There we
The
go.
only person to have it.
He doesn't
But-
fly.
Just make it look as it does. I don't want it to animate. I just want it to be the static dragon that I'm sliding around the ground.
Even paint it.
What he hasn't told you is that it's just a minifigure, so it's literally about 6 inches tall in the game.
Sad. Rob thought he won, but he lost. Again, thank you everyone for being here. Vu, Ben, Salim, it's great to have had you the last couple weeks here. It was an absolute pleasure. Tony, we're so glad you were able to join us for today. I know we wish we could have gotten to every question that we had gotten, but it was a pleasure to have you guys here.
Awesome. I was glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yep,
The-
it was a lot of fun.
The archive is going to be up on youtube.com/The Rob and Dan Show later on in the week. The archive should be up immediately, though, if you guys want to listen back to any of it, right here on twitch.tv/The Rob and Dan Show. Just go to our archives. You'll be able to find it. That's all for us. That's it. The Kickstarter ends this Saturday. Looking forward to seeing if we can reach that goal, making sure we can try and get to the Kickstarter limit there. Thank you guys. Appreciate it once again. This has been twitch.tv/Rob and Dan Show and the Pantheon Developers Series. For Rob, I have been Dan.
For Dan, I have been Rob.
That's the show. Good night now.